Hey everyone, so today I basically want to do a quick video based around teaching you guys how to plan out your weekly training schedule or have a look at a little bit of program design. So athletes in all other sports will all have a weekly training schedule which they will follow, and it's essentially designed months before a big competition so that you have all of the pieces of the puzzle all planned out and you know exactly what you need to be doing each and every week and bringing you and leading you right into that major competition. Now, one of the biggest or two of the biggest factors in improving your performance and maximizing your potential is always going to be accountability. So how do we create something that holds you accountable each week? So one of the biggest issues that you have as a dancer is that you're going to dance class maybe 3-4 times per week, but how do we hold you accountable outside of dance class for all the other things that need to be completed to enhance your main dance performance? So holding you accountable is something that is massively important when planning your training program. The second one is always going to be sustainability. So how sustainable is your training program? So if we're designing your weekly training schedule, we need to make sure that not only does it hold you accountable every day, so you know exactly what you're meant to be doing when you get up, you have your program there, you follow it every single day as it should be, but we also need to make sure that it is actually sustainable. So you're not going to turn around after 4 or 5 weeks and say it's something that you can't complete anymore. It's not going to have too much training that you're going to get injured. It's not going to be inconsistent, so each week isn't different. So we need to make sure that your training program keeps you accountable, but it is also sustainable for the entire year. Now, when we're looking at your actual training program, we have to note down all of the things that actually make up a great dancer. So what is it that we actually need in your training program? The first thing is obviously going to be dance, okay? So that is your number one priority, which you obviously all have nailed down very well. Now the second thing we have to look at then is conditioning. So just because you can dance doesn't actually mean that you're going to have the fitness to last a full dance, right? So in here you may learn the dancing steps, but you might actually not have the ability to complete them at full speed with sharpness, power. You may not have the stamina to get to the end of a dance. And so not only do you need the technical aspect of dance, but we also need some level of conditioning to get through the dance. Now on top of that, we also then have to have a look at strength, okay? So when we look at strength, if you're a weak dancer, you can still be very technically perfect, but you may not have the strength to execute with speed and power, okay? Now, strength comes into play whenever you're looking at how high you can get off the ground, because essentially the stronger you are, the more force you can produce through the ground, which means the higher you can get off the ground, right? So if I want to then improve or enhance any of your main dance steps, I must make sure that A, I can dance, but B, I have an improvement in my strength so that I can execute the steps powerfully like they need to be. On top of the strength, we're also going to then need to have a look at core, okay? So core training is a huge aspect of your performance, and you're not really going to develop that through dancing alone, at least not as much as you need to. Now, core comes into play obviously when we're looking at keeping your upper body still. Your dancers have a very weak upper body in relation to their lower body, which means that you're going to have a lot of upper body unnecessary movement occurring, and so we need to have a look at core work. So whilst you still may be able to learn your dancing in class, it doesn't mean that your upper body is going to be perfect, because you're not actually doing any upper body or core work in class, or maybe some of you are, but the main component of a dance lesson is to teach you how to dance, right? So after core, you also then have to have a look at flexibility and mobility. So flexibility and mobility are key in your performance, because this kind of dictates how much range of motion you're going to have. So even though again you may still be able to dance and you've learned your steps very well, do you have the full range of movement required to get into the positions that this sport requires you to get into? So you need to be able to get your clicks over your head, your front kicks over your head. You need to be able to get your cuts to your hip and so on. Now if you can't do that, you can still dance, you still know your steps, but your flexibility and mobility doesn't allow you to get into those positions, okay? So you can see at the moment that we have 5 components, okay? And actually what we should add in is a 6th, because we also need our rest, okay? Which is a huge component. So we need to fit all 6 of these things into your weekly training schedule. Now you must understand that when you're dancing, if you're a beginner, when you start dancing, you will improve your strength, you will improve your conditioning, you will improve your core, because they will happen by default of just taking something up that's new. But what happens when you've been dancing for 3 or 4 years or 5 years? Your body adapts, right? So no longer are you developing a lot of conditioning. You've got the strength that you need to get through in class. You've got the core that you need to get through in class. So if we're looking to actually take your performance up another level, we need to look at what components actually improve this on top of your technical ability to dance. So we need to have a look at, like I say, conditioning. How do we get you fitter in order for you to keep up those steps for longer? How do we get you stronger in order for you to execute these steps more powerfully? How do we get your core stronger in order for you to stabilize your spine and just get rid of any unnecessary movement in your upper body? And how do we improve your flexibility and mobility so that you can have the full range of motion to get into the positions that the sport requires you to get into? And on top of that, finally, we need to make sure we have enough rest days so that we don't fatigue and that this program can be as sustainable as possible, okay? So what do? Let's plan out our Monday through till Friday. So what I want you guys to do after you watch this video is just simply write down a weekly diary. This is exactly what we do with our dancers on the academy. Is we go through a weekly training schedule right at the very start. It'll be a little bit more tailored than this, but because this is being watched by so many people, we gotta keep it a little bit generic. So you're gonna write down Monday through till Sunday, and we're gonna try and put all of this component into your weekly schedule, but remembering that it has to be accountable and it has to be sustainable, okay? So I always recommend that every dancer or every athlete will have at least 3 to 4 days at their main sport, depending on how long they've been at it for, at the level that they're at, and so on. So if we're going to say today we're going to choose a dancer who's dancing 4 days per week, because it's easier to show 4, and if anybody's dancing 3, you can just remove a day, as opposed to showing 3 and then the people that are doing 4 are confused. So in this, we're going to choose a dancer that is already dancing 4 days per week. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add dancing. So let's say, for example, you're dancing on a Monday, you're dancing on a Wednesday, you're dancing on a Friday, and you're dancing on a Saturday, or you may have a competition that day, okay? So there's your 4 dancing days. Now, after your dance days, we must schedule in rest before we add in anything else. So for me, we're always gonna put rest down on a Sunday, simply because it is a family day. Most people can rest on a Sunday, and it's a good day to add that in. So we have our rest day in. Now the challenge becomes, where do we add all of this type of stuff in? Now you may be thinking, well, what am I actually meant to do in these sessions? You don't need to worry about that for now. You just need to know that these are important components. So let's have a look at conditioning. So we dance on Monday, then let's say we have Tuesday off. So instead of practicing your dance steps at home, which is okay to do, but bear in mind, guys, if you already know your dance steps, then you already know how to do them, right? So repeatedly practicing something at a slower speed isn't going to help you on stage, because like when you know how to ride a bike, you always know how to ride a bike, right? And you may have seen the dancing video that Lauren put out the other day of her dancing after 5 years. She done her set dance after 5 years and essentially didn't miss a beat, right? Now, it may not have been as sharp as she was before, it may not have been as powerful as she was before, she may not have had the conditioning as she did before, but she was still able to dance, okay? And that's the most important thing that you guys got to remember, is that on the days that you aren't dancing, you're doing a lot of home practice. So essentially, this would be dance, this would be dance, that would be dance, but you're doing exactly the same thing. Now, unless you're trying to pick up new steps or you're trying to correct certain technique, if you're running through full dances and constantly practicing, I know and you know that you're doing it slower than competition conditions. So what is the benefit of that? Could we not use these days to improve these areas of your training so that when we go into these main classes, that they are actually better, you're stronger, you're fitter, you're faster, yeah? So anything that we add in these days must actually complement these main dance days and not get in the way of them, okay? They're there to enhance your main dance days. So if we add in conditioning on a Tuesday, Apologies if the camera's shaking. If we add in conditioning on a Tuesday, then what we can also have a look at next is strength. So where do we add in strength? So we can do strength on a Thursday. Okay, and then we don't have any days left. So what are we meant to do? Well, don't worry. We still have core and we still have flexibility and mobility. But here's the thing. You do not need a full free day to do core training, because one of the biggest things of core training is that I've never ever met anybody that can do 1 hour of full proper core training. If you do core training properly, you can probably hold out for 10 to 15 minutes max. Okay, and that's at a very advanced level, because the idea behind core training is that it's about how quickly you can feel, as in FAIL, how quickly you can feel, not how long you can hold it for. Okay, because you're using your core on stage for 60 to 90 seconds and you need to recruit that as powerfully as you can. So what is the point in trying to do core work for 1 hour and holding it at a 50% rate, so you're just making things easier for yourself because you know you've got longer to go, when essentially we don't need your core to be working for 1 hour, we need it to work extremely hard for 60 to 90 seconds. So what we do with our core training is we're going to shorten it down, and you're going to put in little 5 to 10 minute core blocks at the end of every session. Okay, very, very easy. 5 to 10 minutes. But this means that those across the week, if you're doing 10 minutes per day, you're still getting 60 minutes of work. So you've still got 1 full hour of core training. But what we have done is we've broken it up into 10-minute sections per day, which means that each 10 minutes is going to be much more effective because you're doing them fresh. Okay, so that allows you to do a really hard, intense 10-minute core training, which allows your core to be very, very strong over a 60 to 90 second period. But for anybody that's doing core training for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and you're holding your planks for 5 minutes, 6 minutes, there's no way in this world that you're engaging as hard as you physically can, and you're probably just resting all of the pressure on your elbows, on your feet, your lower back's dipped, and so on. So the core training must be short, but really, really effective, okay? On top of this, we then have flexibility and mobility. Guys, what Lauren and what I would always try to do with athletes is have a lot of mobility placed in on rest days. Okay? Because this helps recovery, right? So the aim of a rest day is obviously to recover. So we need to help recovery, improve your blood flow, get the circulation going, and recover the muscle tissue. So when we add in some mobility work on a Sunday, it keeps the joints mobile, which means you're not going into Monday really, really stiff, but also you're not fatiguing yourself. So mobility can go in on a rest day, and mobility, what I mean by that, guys, is the mobility of a joint, okay? So you need to be working on opening up the hips. You need to be working on opening up the shoulders for that posture. We're not actually physically talking about flexibility, which can be added in here as well, but mobility is great on a rest day. Flexibility we can add in at the end of any training session throughout the week. So we can add in flexibility at the very end as a cool down method, where it's okay to sit in static stretch. And mobility we can always add in at the beginning of any session. We can do a quick 5 to 10 minutes of mobility to open up the hips, just warm up the body and get the nervous system switched on. Remember, the difference between mobility and flexibility is mobility, you're moving with these movements, but you're getting loose. Flexibility is you're just sitting there as in a static stretch position, okay? That's what I'm referring to as flexibility, static stretching. Now we've covered all of that. Now, if you have a look at a rest day, the rules around rest day are very simple. The rest day is there to promote recovery, so you cannot switch on your nervous system. No nervous system activation. Okay? No nervous system activation, because the aim of the rest day is to allow your nervous system to switch off, which promotes recovery. If you think a rest day is not doing anything that's on this list, but again, then going out and doing something entirely different, just because it's not dancing doesn't mean it's still a rest day. It might be a rest day or a break from your training program, but the body and the nervous system is still switched on. So you need to completely switch off. You can foam roll on this day, you can do some mobility on this day, some kind of soft tissue work on this day, but you cannot create fatigue, or you cannot switch on the nervous system, okay? So that's essentially what a training program would look like for a dancer that's dancing 4 days per week and really wants to reach the top. okay? It's not going to be, if you don't want to reach the top, then you're not going to hold yourself accountable and you're just not going to sustain it. But for a dancer that is really switched on and engaged, this is exactly what you need to do. Now, before we go, we should just have a look at how would this change throughout the year. So you know that these what you're meant to do on each day, but what are you actually meant to do in that session, right? Now, if we have a look at conditioning, when we're looking at conditioning, we're specifically talking here about conditioning the heart, right? So your aerobic and your anaerobic fitness. So we're looking at your lactic acid tolerance, we're looking at your stamina, we're looking at your speed, sharpness, acceleration, power. It all comes in under this conditioning session here. So depending on what time of year it is, depending on how far or how close you are to competition, will essentially depend, and also depending on your weakest area, that will all depend on what you do on this session. So if you're really far out from competition, you might want to work on your stamina to build a base. Aerobic fitness, if you're really close to competition, you maybe focus more on speed, sharpness, and power. But ultimately, that will all come into that session. Now, when we're having a look at strength work, well, what you're probably asking, what are we actually meant to do when it comes to strength? Strength is going to be in 3 categories, guys. You're going to have a look at structural strength, which isn't specific to the sport, but it's more about building a solid foundation. So we need to make sure that you basically have an all-round level of strength and you don't have any weak areas, instability anywhere, and that your upper body is as strong as what your lower body is, so that you don't have any imbalances. That all comes under structural strength. The other type of strength you're going to have is performance strength, where we essentially look at how to maximize your dance-specific movements. So if we're looking at strength as a way to increase your height and lift off the ground, we need to have you doing movements that make you produce more power through the ground. So we can have things like squats, we can have things like heavy step-ups, all with extra resistance and dumbbells. So the harder you're pushing through the ground, when you remove that weight, you're able to then train the body to lift off at a greater height without that resistance, okay? And then the final type of strength is neural strength, and something that we're focusing big on in the Junior Academy is neural strength. And what we mean by that is all of your skills. So your agility, your speed, your spatial awareness, your coordination, all of those things come into neural strength. And as a young dancer, you're very susceptible to developing these skills at a very early age, okay? The older you get, the harder these skills are to develop, which is why we don't focus on them in the Senior Academy. The Senior Academy is all based around improving your performance strength and your structural strength. But in the Junior Academy, we're going to focus big on the neural aspect of it so that we can get you as balanced, as stable as possible before you fully develop, okay? And then, like we say, on the mobility and flexibility, it's all about just movement and static stretching. And on your core days, guys, what we mean when we look at core is how do we keep the body stabilized and rigid. You just need to understand the difference between core training and ab training. Obviously, core training, the main aim of your core is to stabilize your spine, so keep everything still. The main aim of ab training, or your abs, is to actually move the upper body. So as a dancer, our goal is to keep the upper body still. So we need to favor a lot more towards core training than we do ab training, because abdominal crunches is going to pull your torso forward, and we actually want to train the body to stay upright, and that requires more stabilization work than actual movement, okay? So we will have a big focus on core stability rather than actual ab movements, okay? So guys, I hope that helps. Here it is, a simple program for a dancer that is dancing 4 days per week and wants to maximize their performance across all areas. If you like this whiteboard presentation and you want me to do some more, just let me know what type of topics that we can scan out on a whiteboard, and I will get those done for you. Thanks for watching, guys.